weird things happen when you finish something and walk away from it. It's obvious that this little guy bears some watching. Meet Grogu, a very talented artist by the name of Claudio Diaz made this pattern. I've had the pattern itself for many years. And now with some new technical improvements, I had some opportunities, and he was a perfect experiment to bring all of those technical advancements together. This is actually 150%, give or take, of Mr. Diaz's A4 sized original. He's 21 centimeters tall. The deeply extensive and highly detailed Google search that I did that took all of 90 seconds tells me on, believe it or not, dimensions.com that Grogu is actually 40.5 centimeters tall, which makes this guy precisely to 3 digits or so, 1 in 192 scale. So he's about half size. 4-page original pattern, 99 parts. Roll that into a 150 size larger pattern, and what you get is, well, I don't know, I didn't even count them. Claudio does excellent directions. They take some patience and some interpretation, but they're well thought through. His 4-page original, clear, well detailed. You can pick it with no tabs. You can pick it with tabs. So like anything that is Papercraft-esque, you can decide whether you want those things. In the end, I didn't care. I rolled myself into the most horrendous polar bear in a snowstorm fight that I have ever been in. It took me forever to figure out where all of the little gray parts folded together. I did it. The original coloration on the paper ended up being kind of a primer. Put a base color on the parts. So what we come up with is, son of Shrek. He's got hopped up eyeballs, repeated washes, everything in 3s, so there's 3 values of paint here. He's got a little base is on his behind. He's got feet. But what that really does is give him the tiny, subtle elevation. And when we do the reveal, you'll be able to see some of those subtleties, and his brother will join in. The plan is 4 episodes. I'm going to try to follow the great Lou Del Mazo and come up with something, spectacular at the end of each. 1, meet the parts and the hands and the cuffs. 2, how did I do this and why did I do this? And the cloak. Cloak itself is boring other than, taking your time to put it together, but I can explain the process. 3, the base. Off camera right now, but absent the fact that the cats on board, Starship paper guy, love this enclosed space, Grogu is going to look great in here. White greeblies, black greeblies, illuminated Star Wars wall, illuminated Death Star wall. Light him up from behind. So that'll be interesting. The final episode, Cabeza. And then we'll wrap him up, put him together, and do some beauty shots. It's another one of those Adam Savage moments. He looked like garbage up until the moment that I, glued the head in. And then he had to sit on the bedside for a night or two, just so that when I woke up, I could admire him again. Uh, Lots of interesting stuff here and a fun result. I'm the glue and paper guy. Let's build a Grogu. Meet the parts. There's Claudio's rendition. And remember, it's about yay big. For years, every time I looked at this pattern, I thought the books were real. They're not. He just made renditions of the covers and then let them hook over. So you can tell that the printed version has a lot of classic sort of figure-esque detail, highlighted shadows, heavy shadows, which makes better when you're way back and looking at a teeny tiny thing. You can see the details. That's not where we're going, but that was the original result, and it is worth taking a look. Here's Claudio's directions, materials, stuff like that. And you see his direction style. If you look, you can tell that he's just simply made transparent parts of the three-dimensional model. It's pretty thorough. Takes you all the way through. It's incredibly helpful when you go to do the cloak, because you just ding, 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 all around. At one point, I was halfway through the cloak at one point, and I thought it was a piece of trash. I was looking in from the hall, and I thought I'd left a big wad of paper on my desk. Wasn't it? It was back of Grogu's cloak. Final assembly. When you get this down, he's actually a very simple doll. Nice little head. Cuffs, hands. There's a sleeve inside the cuffs, which makes the hands very convenient. Here's the original pattern. And this one, as you'll see, has the lines. They had to be pink so that the contrast will let your eyes see them. I did enough of this one before I just decided I didn't want to, that I found that I could cut inside these lines without trouble or concern. Another interesting thing that goes right on theme. I talked about technical enhancements, and over the breadth of this work, you will see them. See that? And that? And that? These were made to be cut by a machine and set for an A4 standard. So those who possess a machine who can read these and cut them can stick it one end, and based on what I'm doing, I'll take these pages 90 seconds a piece. Bam, 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 bam. And then Claudio had the sense to mark his parts. Well, I got there eventually. Head, parts of the sleeves and cloak, more cloak. Interestingly, perhaps in the original model, this bottom works. I didn't even print it. It's I only cut it once. It's I don't know, doesn't quite work out the shape. More of the cloak. So the pattern itself is just those 4 pages, and it's pretty good stuff. Now, next up, my rendition. And what you see here are probably the Mark 7 or Mark 10 versions of these parts. And you see the registration marks again. There's some more stuff on here. It took me a long time to get here, but there's some more stuff here. That is exactly 10 millimeter by 20, deliberately. And I finally came to the point where I figured out that I needed to mark the page and to mark the parts. So when this gets cut, you'll have nothing but green parts. So using the process, you cut them, and you pick them out one at a time, and you write the name on the back of them, and then you move on. You see the relationship? It's, it's 150%. Face, neck and hands. Believe it or not, those squiggly things are hands. And they fold together marvelously. Kudos again. Registration mark on that one might be wrong. Doesn't look like it's the same size. You know what? At this point, it doesn't matter. But that registration mark is my mark to know when I'm lining it up for cut. More on that later. More parts. You see the last. I saved the head and hands for last because that's where the actual page name is. But as we proceed through this, you can tell that I got more and more simplistic. And you begin to understand the polar bear and the snowstorm issue. Every one of these parts is exactly the same color, and it is pretty freaking anonymous when you peel them off the machine and throw them in a bowl. I had to do one more thing, which again will make more sense when you see the process. In order to get this beautiful arc, which on the original pattern is a single part, I had to cut it and realign it and mark it. And in my mind, I know that that goes there because I made myself a tab here and I made it flat there. Worked like a champ. Took a long time to get there. So that extended the number of pages for the parts. Overall, pretty cool. And the other thing about these parts, score points are obvious. It don't matter that the lines aren't there. You know where to score them. Even in this case, you see that? There's one side. Let's get a little closer and really dig into this. Score from here to the point, because that is a tab. That happens quite commonly in this process. That little jink right there is half a tab. I made myself a tab to go from here to here so that I could get the whole breadth of that part inside the magic lines. So there's parts. The values of brown. I dinked around. I had like 6 different bottles of brown, and I dinked around and figure out which was what, and then let it take me from there. Burnt sienna ended up being the base and working very well, and the others just enough of an accent. The slate gray, I thought about an additional wash in slate gray. I just dropped it. I didn't make a color sheet for the skin. Well, I didn't do some of them, but you see, three greens essentially, and there's the flesh. The secret ingredient. Ladies, why you would pay $14 for this, I will never know. And also, if you wanted to use this to gloss something up, it will start to cure in the can if you don't make sure it's nice and tight. And I had to go buy another bottle for that reason. Last time you saw this, again, son of Shrek. There's my eye paint, my how-to paint, my different eyeballs paint. Works good, lasts a long time. Ship it. Foam detail. The bumps on his cloak. I just did this and painted them enough times that it soaked in. Now there's a trick that every modeler should avail themselves of. That, it should be quite obvious, is a Christmas ball. A plastic Christmas ball from your favorite big box hobby store. I got about a dozen of them laying around. I have plans for other sizes and other shapes. But that curve worked out to be just enough to cut me little fingernail-sized pieces, fit them into the eye sockets, and detail them up. Very nice. Very, very nice. And there's some matte gray for what it's worth. Black is always necessary in these projects. So there we go. Now one more trick Mark II is going to get that Mark I didn't get. This is not the color you're looking for. Fear not. One of these is going to get hacked up and lovingly placed on the outside of that cloak to turn it into actual cloth and to get the texture. I haven't quite figured it out completely yet. Probably Mod Podge the cloak and then apply this in parts or strips. And you know, this texture is a little bit too obvious, but it might work for the cuffs. So God willing, there's enough acreage on this guy. And I just found that I have another source. In fact, I might even have a brown one that I could cut up and do this with if nobody's looking. That then, my dear friends, is how he's going to get put together. So, nothing else to it but to do it. Hey, stop that. You keep messing around like that, how can I make a hand for you? We are going to do this and this. It's a good place to start in how we fold up the hands and do the extra detail is instructive of the rest of the model. Also, I don't know if you can see this, let's do it that way. See this? There are cuffs, and they come out so beautifully when you put them in there. It really looks like it's got sleeves. Additionally, the cuffs cup the little paws, and they have a really good place, this solid place to ground to in both cases. So, I mean, that's what you get. And you see his expression. He's using the force and then sort of balancing himself with the other hand. And depending upon how you turn the hands and exactly how you put those fingers in, you get quite a bit of expression out of it. So that's what we're going to do. He can wait over there. Well, I'll put him over here because he's a nice little eye candy there. I didn't add these to the materials part. Alcohol markers, don't fold, spindle, or mutilate, don't ingest them. They have two different tips. That's a brush. And on their opposite end is a chisel. These things are another arrow in the quiver for coloring the paper. Now they bleed. Okay, but that doesn't matter because the other thing that they can do is blend. So when I finish the outside of the sleeves, we'll simply color them with these. It's faster than the paint. It gives a really nice result. And, I don't have to pull out the paint pots. They're fairly expensive piece by piece from your favorite big box. There are two brands, there are actually many brands, but two most commonly over the counter. These are the ones that are most recently available at your favorite big box hobby store. And $6 a piece unless you catch them on sale, so watch it. The other funny thing about these, just by way of instruction, everybody and their cousin stores markers like this. Don't store paint markers like this because one or the other tip will dry out more or less permanently. So I made myself a thing that holds them horizontally. And they seal very tightly so they remain viable for a very long time. You know what this is? It's, ambrosia, liquid of the gods. You know what that is. There's a working time to this and its darker packaged cousin, which is sometimes an advantage and sometimes a frustration. With paper, at least, you got to I'm holding it for a seemingly inordinate amount of time. I use this as a dodge whenever I need to get something and keep something right now. The way this is built, the tabs that form this cuff, there's random change might be able to, I don't know, I probably can't. But the tabs that form this cuff, I fold them back and I just glued them. C8 them in place. Parts is parts. Claudio's directions, pretty decent vis-a-vis hands and arms. There is some interpretation required. It says B26 and B30 are internal. That indicates that they're the cuffs. You know, we'll do the sleeves and the cloak later. So B26 and B30, there's our original sheet. And I'll use this as a guide to score them here presently. Everything that's scanned is green. It's on the first page, so that eliminates a lot of the guesswork. My parts don't have the claws on them. More on that later. However, we see the claws. So those are the fingers. There's a palm, there's a palm, there's an arm, there's an arm. And if you pay attention to Claudio's directions on that subject, you will see, make it look easy. Basically, one arm's odd, one arm's even. So you lay out the parts like that, and this, I did a lot of running around and screwing up before I figured out how this whole thing goes. Basically, make the fingers, then the palm, then the wrist, and if you make the fingers and then the palm, then you can figure out where each finger goes into the palm before you seal it up, and then you can minimize gaposis. So that's pretty much, you know, how you do it. Ancillary to that, there's a rolled up sleeve on the outside. We'll deal with those as we begin to build the arms, and then the cloak seems to be right. So going forward, it's going to be collar, arms, cuffs, cloak. That's for later. This is for now. So you got two hands. I'm right-handed. We'll start on the right. I'm going to do one hand this way for you. I'm going to black that out on this side, keeping track of which hand it is. Then score all of it. Then fold up the fingers. Then fold up the palm. Then fold up the wrist. And we'll have an assembled hand. Clock time's been less than a minute. And that's already bone dry. I'm going to let it go a little longer. I can still feel moisture in the paper. You can follow along. Here's my example over there. So here's a clue. There's a tab. Score marks will come through the paint, so we may end up seeing that little tiny bit there, but we'll take it as it comes. And you see how eventually your eyes will begin to figure it out without, you know, I'm doing this without a net now. I'm not sure if your mind can bend that into a finger yet, but it'll be obvious in a second. That one I missed. My memory is I did bend these, but I'm not sure I want to score any of these. because I want to have it be a little roundier. It's almost invisible in the finished piece, but let's take the risk for now. These I want to bend, and there's a wrist, and I taught the pattern to make that cut so that I don't have to add it in. So that's an easy place to start. Palm's going to bend up, and that's going to glue it. The fingers will go here. So I'm reticent to go too crazy about scoring stuff. And I don't see any reason to score any of the stuff that's down near the wrist, because the wrist is going to go into the sleeve. All right. Every one of these, this is good and dry now. It's still a bit damp, but it's okay. You see there's a touch bleed through, but it's mostly on the tabs. And since I'm going to kind of weather up the sleeves a little bit, doesn't matter. All right, this guy's the easiest to assemble. So I guess my question is, why not? Mostly invisible, still easy enough to hide. Got something to hold it tight with. If this slops a little bit, it doesn't matter. Can't see it. And always, whenever the opportunity presents, push the tab in to tend to draw the glue underneath. You may have even seen a little blob of it do that exact thing. Now that's where it gets weird, because I'm trying to make it stay in place and it doesn't want to. We know glue wets and then dries, even tacky glue. This is a new bottle, so it'll bond relatively quickly, but there's working time there while it wets. It's very distorted and biological frustum, but it's a frustum nonetheless. It's a cone with no tops and bottoms. Now it's going to go in. That's in, that's out. These will become things that will catch. I'm trying to think which side I'm on. Okay, so this is the right side, all right? So this part of his hand is going to go into the bottom of that cuff. No reason, nothing needs to be glued permanently here. They just need to be ready to hold that hand. Now this is where I got crazy with the glue earlier. Nothing structural, I'm just holding them back. The pliers are about keeping my fingers clean, which was useless because now I have it on my finger. There we go. The hand goes down in there like that. Let's see if I black it out. If I black it out and it stays black, then I don't need to do more detail inside this. And it looks like it's going to work. Okay, I'm staying inside the lines, as it were. Now the eye will tend to dismiss the detail inside there. I got 3 different values of gray: C1, C2, C9. Not necessarily in this order. I'm going to start with the lightest one, and my mission is to get some detail to that sleeve. You see that it's only marginally lighter in color than what was there. There should be a word for I'm going to paint it, but you'll never see it. Well, I'm going to paint it, but you'll never see it. But what you may begin to be seeing is that additional coats darken the marker. Be tight. So now I'm working those edges to blend into the black. We'll paint that out later. And to catch any white spots that came through. Trying to be directional. I can different part of the tip, different texture. This is a brush. It is absolutely a brush, and it behaves exactly like a brush. You don't have to dip it in the paint pot. See how where I've already painted, it builds up, it gets darker. And that right there is an adequate sleeve. We'll pay attention to the seam down when we put it in. We'll glue the hand down against that ring on the inside. And the other one, of course, will get done exactly like the other one. Now, to protect my dyslexia, I'm going to mark this clearly so I can read it later. I'm even going to spell it out so I don't get confused. You will never see that. This is going to be the wrist. It needs nothing immediately except to be glued into a circle, therefore we will do that. Just like the other one. In fact, right up until H hour, we'll be able to see into the hand. Anybody who's seen more than one of my videos knows how to do this. There's, see the little hip there and hip right there? That's my hint. That's where it needs to go. I don't even care about this right now. If this was going to be paper and largely unpainted, I would care. Here I don't care. Simple reason. It's going to get painted. I want those 2 points to stay where they're at. So, this is where I hold my breath and wait for the glue to begin to wet and cure before I try to slam a tool on it. Tacky glue, there, you can see the advantage of tacky glue right then, right there. It was not long in comparison to what regular liquid PVA would do. But I got the highest accuracy I could achieve reasonably, almost. I don't care about goobies, because any of the goobies that stick up, because my finger discipline was bad, I'll just scrape them off. It's going to get painted. And within reason, a little texture in the skin is going to be, you know, is almost appropriate. Okay. I'm not going to promise you that that is actually the right hand and the left hand. Just bear with me. So you see what happens. That's the palm. So I know for a fact that I got at least, that one bend, right? And I know for a fact that it's at least going to do that. This is an organic form. So if I keep those other bends soft, I get the closest, I'm going to get a more organic result. And if I try to fold some, score and fold some. In this case, I'm breaking my own rules already, right? I'm doing it backwards than I had done the others. So I do this backwards too. I overshoot and pull back. Again, this was regular PVA, it'd still be hanging on to the thing to keep it from wiggling. Now here's something I haven't really decided how useful it is yet. Maybe mooshing it like that will give me a slightly more organic result. Because his palm's probably going to warp. See how that's... Yeah, let's do this. See how that's aimed? It's going this way a little bit. When you're done, it'll probably go the other way. But I would rather the fingers force it into that orientation than to try to invent it. Now, I want a hole for each of the 3 fingers. Probably won't be the last time I say this in this build. The paper in this model is going to be tortured. I'm going to put it through some things that it should not go through. With the blithe assertion that it will do it. Just going to insist that it does it and make it happen, and that's going to be that. Reason being, it's an organic form, and I want the result to appear organic. So bending and warping the paper and rubbing down the joints and doing all that stuff, if all goes well, will give me a slightly more organic result. Now we'll see how much of that gets puckers back into a fold, and we'll see exactly where his palm goes. Finger, finger, finger. You see those profiles? Finger, finger, finger. Middle one's long, the 2 side ones are shorter. So it's kind of like that, right? And I'm not going to work any harder than to fold up the fingers and then figure out where they go. This is going to be an example of some of the genius of the original artist. If you are patient and try it several different ways, you will find that the joints do that. That's how the wrist fits. And my first clue was I'm going to put the seams on the bottom. That was a random decision. And I'm going to do this. I don't have to think that through twice. The pencil will disappear. I'm breaking so many habits while I'm doing this simply because it's going to get a coat of paint on it. My concern about the exterior is minimal. I'm way more worried about the form. The more I think about it, the more I think that the organicness, whenever I'm doing something organic, demands it. It demands paint. I showed not too long back my redone Marvin the Martian. That's the hot rod blade, the X11. And they are superior. Marvin got painted. Great. Now, how am I going to do this? I don't know which finger this is going to be. I'm going to make a finger and then make a finger and then make a finger, and I'm going to leave it at that. I do know that that's the claw. So if that's the claw, then this is the exterior. And everything else pretty much has to follow along. Something a little bit like this. See that smiley face right there? That informs the crook of the finger, doesn't it? Look at that. Yet another way to do this, which will become obvious later. Did not do this the first time. Let's see how much more organic a result we get out of Grogu Mark II. That is going to go under the nail. So there's a helping hand there. Pun intended. I'm test fitting, which one should do as often as is reasonable. So that's how that first piece of that finger is going to circle around. It may well come out to a much squarer form. Let's start here and work backwards to where it's going to be. Standard rule, don't use any more glue than you need to. This gets a little ticky. Another case where I'm going to have to hold it once I bond it, because I'm going to have to wait until I get a tool in there to get serious about it. I could get in there and cut the tab a little shorter to accommodate getting to the line, other things. I don't want to do that because I prefer to have as much bulk as I can when I put the fingers together. That's staying real good, so I'm just going to go in here. Okay. Find ye form where ye may. There's a cone on the end of the pencil. Now I gotta be careful because the cone has bumps in it, so I don't want the bumps to come through later. What I'm trying to do is to just iron down that seam. Flatten it out as much flat as I can flatten it. I got 2, so I do it all the time. Begin to get a hint of the form here. When I close that gap, it's going to start to turn in the corner. The finger's doing this. That tab's curled a little tight, so we're going to have to play around a little bit. Now if that first grip would just hold it perfect and keep it that way forever, life would be beautiful. It's not. It won't. Here we go. There. I really want you to stay there. A couple goobies. When this part is less than 1/4 inch long, you don't see this. This is basically a recipe for disaster, but it's the best way to do business. I'm going to mate these and then tickle on some liquid CA. The acrylic will cover it. Doesn't matter if some of it goes across the outside, but I'll try to keep it as little as possible. I'm going to push that down to kill the gap and then tease some glue in there. Or let's try putting the glue on and then tickling it down. That could work too. Not a finger finished, but an organic finger. And most of that joint is now acrylic. I might even be able to file it a little bit if I got really creative. So, go over with the end. Tells me where the nail is, how far the nail is going to stick out. And you can see how I jump back and forth interchangeably between PPA and CA. We'll put a nail on the end, you'll see that. I'm going to do the other fingers off camera. just so you don't have to sit through it. And the final part about that is, let's see, I think, based on the curve of the finger, that it will be here. And it'll get, you know, 2 companions. And when we have enough fingers, we'll put it all together and show you the story. 2 hands, 2 cuffs. Lefty is nailed. Gonna zoom in there close so you can get a good look. Chips of half-round styrene strip. You know where you can get this stuff. It's common as cordwood. I'll do one quickly, just so we see how it does. And, you know, the minute you think about it, you realize it's just pretty obvious. I cut a pointy end. Bevel it down a little bit grossly. So just for convenience sake, I'm going to use this long nail because it's easier to demonstrate. Hang on to that, figure out how big it is, and nick it. I use the Granddaddy's shovel blades here, chisel blades I guess they are. Take that down to size. I have a sharp implement in my hand, so it's easy to do this part too. Inexactitude is of value simply because these are fingernails. They're random, they're organic. Nice little manicure. I want his claws to not be threatening. I just want them to be claws. Getting shaky cam because I'm leaning against the desk. Okay, now I have a nail. Now I have some CA. This is the part where I usually pitch it across the desk 12 times. So this is the part where we remind ourselves to make it look easy. There's a paper nail on the end of these fingers. Using that as alignment. A little shorter than I might have wanted it, doesn't matter. Again, organic. Rinse, repeat 2 more times. I'm going to throw a little bit more of a wash on these. I'm thinking I'm going to want probably some darker and some lighter again, and something around the nails to take them down a little bit so they don't reach out and smack you with their color. I also want to change the color of the behind. So that's where we are this go around. Grogu has hands. Much better hands. Less geometric, more organic, deeper color. Off camera, I added some dark washes, which really brought him out. Next time around, I'm going to do his cloak. His cloak is boring. His cloak is just a complex frustum. I will coat it in cloth, and it'll probably be a little bit more on the gray spectrum than it is on the brown. During that video, I'm going to talk about how I got here and why. This is my big wide-bodied vinyl cutter. It cuts vinyl, it cuts paper,
might cut cardboard. Not sure I want to go there yet. With this, I am free to scale. Grogu can be this big if I choose. I am free to cut an entire kit accurately in a 15 or 20 minute session, exclusive of the pre-work of building the part patterns. So with those patterns easily scalable and completely cut, I'm free to build it at speed and in whatever way I want. And I have the patterns. I can make 20 Grogu in a lick. So next time we'll do those things. We'll show you how to put cloth on this guy and make his cloak more lifelike right along with the rest. Hopefully the process will be interesting, and hopefully you'll see why I think some of these tools are valuable to advance the medium.